welcome Dr. Scott Nelson, our lecturer of this morning, and invite Professor Mark Edelman to introduce you.
Good morning, Boker Tov, תודה שבאתם. I thought that it will be easier to understand our next speaker. I'm not a speaker. I have 5 minutes to introduce Scott. And the reason why we are here, we did this week complex pediatric hip surgery course. If you can lose license in orthopedic surgery, it's because of the periacetabral osteotomy, and that's what we did for 2 days. 5 operation, very successful course with Gavin the Kuwait from UK and Scott. Scott was born in Loma, California, in a family of physicians. And this is the picture of recent picture of the family. I know his sons, much younger, Chad and Alex, his wife Marnie, parents. His father is dentist. In Scott's family, he said, they are all physicians, but nobody internist, all surgeons. And this is his sister Heidi and her husband, Senator Ted Cruz. When Scott was last time here, operated with me in Rambam, it was election in Iowa of Republican Party, and Ted Cruz was a winner. So there's a mythos. Those who won the Iowa usually win all campaign. Fortunately, it doesn't happen, maybe next time. And this picture I took last year in Loma Linda. All the time when Scott entered the lobby of Loma Linda University, he met these 4 founders of the university. Guess who is his great grandfather? This man. He was a president of Loma Linda University from 1914 until 1942. Scott finished pediatric and spine fellowship in San Diego and Rado Children's Hospital, and instead to come back to Loma Linda for pretty convenient life, he decided that he will go with 2 young small kids and a wife for 5 years to Dominican Republic. He was director of Cure Hospital in Dominican, the country of 15 million people. And he was solo pediatric orthopedic and spine surgeon. Nobody operated spine before Scott. I don't know anyone in orthopedic surgery who is able to perform complex hip, complex scoliosis surgery, and he is a real authority in limb reconstruction. Anyone in the world. For me, Scott is the best orthopedic surgeon that I saw, and I saw many in my life. This is the house of Scott in Loma Linda. It's looked like monastery with 4 small rooms with shower outside of the house. During 5 years in Dominican, he made more than 30 trips to Haiti. And when the earthquake happened, he was the first orthopedic surgeon that landed in Port-au-Prince, worked for 6 months in Adventist Hospital in Port-au-Prince without receiving a cent. When I came with my colleague from Afula on board to Port-au-Prince, that's what we saw from the window of the car. And life is unpleasant, softly speaking, unpleasant in the street of Port-au-Prince. And this was the situation in the storage room, in operating room in Adventist Hospital before Scott. Now it looks like this. During the years, he built completely new hospital. It's unbelievable what he did there. So this is the hospital. During this trip in 2050, we were 8 doctors, all in the same room. We shared bathrooms. All the time I prayed that I came back safely to Miami after a week. And this is his son and father who work as installer in operating room. And Scott did by himself everything in this hospital. This is Scott, this is his father, this is Alex. Every morning they started with a prayer in the morning. We did complex surgeries during this trip, really, really complex. It's unbelievable how you can do in this hospital. This is, by the way, a source of water in Port-au-Prince. When I saw this, how it's going from this pool, instead of the whiskey from Ben Gurion duty free and a room that I bought in supermarket, I didn't drink water. And I must tell you this story. We work hard every day for a week. Scott will explain he belongs to Adventist Seventh Day. They are much closer to Judaism than any branch of Christianity. And Friday night he said Shabbat Shalom. It was 11 p.m. Because of the jet lag I fell down. And because of jet lag at 4 I was woke up. Usually they started to move at 4 or 5 p.m. that everybody slept. At 5 a.m. everybody slept. At 6 everybody slept. 7, at 8 I started to make voices, and then Scott said, "Hey Mark, in the middle of the night came the man with near amputation of all fingers. And we all went to operating room in order to save his finger. Otherwise, he will be functional amputee." Then it was Saturday. We went to the church, and it was Parashat Yirmiyahu, story of Jeremiah. And look at these people. Outside of the church, it's a really feces on the street with urine. And look at the polished shoes. Look at the faces in the church. The Israeli flag everywhere. There is no BDS in Port-au-Prince. And this is the streets. כן, אני כבר מסיים. And this is the enter to the hospital. This is the enter to the university hospital. Look how it looks like. This man sitting for more than 24 hours in the street. And that, just the last example. This is the clubfoot that I saw that Scott doing. And this is the end results. My mentor, Dror Peli, once said that Scott is the best example of existence of Jewish sentence, Tikkun Olam. Scott, please share your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Mark, for that incredible introduction. It always gives me a lot to live up to. And don't worry, I think I have less slides in my presentation than Mark had in the introduction. I have to be honest with you, a lot of the things that Mark says about me aren't complete reality. There's only a couple of people in the entire planet that would believe everything he just told you, and that's my mother and father. But thank you for this invitation. It's a real privilege to be here in Israel. Mark's hospitality is an amazing representation, and words just can't describe the experience that I always have when I get to come to Israel, and specifically to come and visit at Rambam Hospital. And this morning I am thrilled to share with you the meaning of what may be a new word for some of you. I think it's probably a concept that most of you already know about. But prepare to be excited as we unravel the mysteries of this word, serendipity. We're almost there with the, okay, very good. Serendipity is more than just being lucky. It's actually an ability of finding valuable things in life unexpectedly. These are things that you can't necessarily look for. They oftentimes actually find you if you prepare yourself and open yourself up to them. The type of good fortune that comes to you that I'm talking about here is something that you actually have some control over. It's not just about being lucky at random. And my understanding of this concept was deepened after reading this book that my grandmother gave me a couple of years ago. It was written in 1965 and it's out of print now, a little bit hard to find. But the author tells us about the origins of serendipity and expounds on the beauty of this concept. The word serendipity was coined by an English historian in 1754 named Horace Walpole, and it came from an ancient Persian fairy tale that occurred in the land of Serendip. Serendip is an island country, was an island country on the tip of India, now known as Sri Lanka, previously Ceylon or the Spice Island. And there was a king there with 3 sons. He wanted his sons to gain wisdom and knowledge, and he sent them out on voyages to travel the world, to learn about the world. And it's said that as their highnesses traveled, they were always making discoveries by accidents and sagacity of things which they were not in quest of. So some of you might be wondering what this word sagacity is. The French word for wisdom is sagesse. And this is the same root of the English word sagacity, which means an acuteness of mental discernment, soundness of judgment, and a keen practical sense. Medicine is filled with many serendipitous events in its history. Louis Pasteur said that in the field of observation, chance favors only the prepared mind. And he was his own best example of this. He was searching for a way to preserve wine without having it become sour, and discovered the process of pasteurization. In southern Germany, in a Bavarian university, Wilhelm Röntgen in the late 1800s was studying how to perfect photography and was leaning over on some vacuum tubes in his laboratory one afternoon and looked down and noticed some fluorescent material. And this led him on the 2-year path which eventually ended in the discovery of the X-ray. And it was just a gust of wind that came through a window in Alexander Fleming's laboratory that led to the discovery of penicillin. In orthopedics, distraction osteogenesis, or the biologic process of bone lengthening, was also discovered quite serendipitously. A family practice doctor, Elizarov, in Siberia was treating wartime injuries in the late 1940s and 1950s with external fixators. And he had his patients tightening the screws on the external fixator to provide stability to these fractures. Dr. Elizarov went on vacation and left some instructions with one of his patients to tighten the screws down. And when he came back, the patient had turned the bolts the wrong way. The fragments of bone had started to pull apart. And what Elizarov noticed is that there was new bone forming in between that gap. And this led him to study this process of distraction osteogenesis. He actually serendipitously perfected this science before it became discovered by the rest of the world. And in Europe and the United States, we didn't know about these methods until the 1980s. And it's revolutionized what we're able to do for patients in orthopedics. Perhaps one of the most well-known serendipities is Columbus's failure to discover a direct route to Asia, instead discovering America. I probably don't need to come to Israel to give this talk because I know that serendipity runs deep in your culture and history here with the number of inventions and this fascinating history here, and specifically even at Rambam Hospital, where some of the most important of these inventions have occurred. Serendipity is something that you can't just go look for. You have to let it find you. Certainly hard work and focus get us some things in life. This is how we build skyscrapers, how we send people traveling in space, how we do complex operations. Hard work, focusing on goals, and I love working hard, but we have to remember that some of the most important things in life, like love, happiness, and meaning, come to us as byproducts of a different type of journey. Even though we live in a capitalistic world, we can't buy these things. We can't buy time. We can spend it and we can waste it, but we're all given equal and limited amounts. You can buy sex, but you can't buy love. We have to remember that happiness is not synonymous with the amount of material goods that we have. It's not synonymous with our level of comfort in life. And good news is that courage and intellect are not something that we're just born with, but they're something that we have control over. We have the ability to take risks in life, to be bold. We have the ability to take these risks to maximize benefit in our own life and even more importantly in the lives of others around us. Intellect is something that's different than intelligence. Intellect comes from the will to obtain knowledge and subsequently have wisdom, and we all have control over that. Purpose is a quality of good leaders. It's a quality that good leaders practice in their own lives, the same that they expect of others. And Jim Collins, in his book entitled From Good to Great, looked at the quality of leaders in a select group of companies. He analyzed multiple organizations that were on the Forbes 500 list and had some very strict criteria for defining companies that sustainably exceeded market trend by more than 7 times. And he looked at the factors that make these companies successful. And specifically, he looked at the traits of the CEOs that led these companies. Somewhat surprisingly, these people were not people that are egocentric, that are extroverted, that are dogmatic, but they're people that are reserved, that are shy, that are self-effacing, but yet have professional will and resolve, and led their companies to be great companies and exceeding the market values multiple times over a long period of time. These are people that took responsibility for the problems and gave credit to other people for their successes, as opposed to the type of person that takes credit for success to themselves and blames other people for their problems. Speaking of the important things in life, this is my family here. And one of the major phases in the journey of our life started in 2005. I had been in practice for about 3 years as an orthopedic surgeon in the United States, and I gave up a job that I loved. We sold our house in California. We packed some things in an ocean container and moved with our boys, who were at that time 5 and 7 years old, to Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. And this is the capital city of about 2 or 3 million people. Third world environment. We were living on a shoestring budget under difficult conditions. And our boys weren't raised like most American kids. They learned what it was like to be minorities. They had to learn a new language and have many experiences. And in reality, we were blessed greatly by these challenges that we faced at that time. And I probably wouldn't even be standing here in front of you if I hadn't made some of those choices to do tough things in life. This mindset that gave me the ideas of this type of lifestyle runs way back in my genetic and family history. This here is my grandfather. He's the one on the left, in case you were wondering. He was a surgeon in Africa, in the Belgian Congo, in a remote and wild part of the African jungle, where he served as a surgeon for over 20 years of his career. He was an immigrant from Finland. He did his training in the United States and Europe and learned how to speak 8 different languages. When I was a child, we went to visit my grandparents in Africa, and that's when I saw my first operation. They dressed me up in a surgical mask and hat and gown, and I stood in the corner and watched as my grandfather took his scalpel across the neck of an African woman to remove a grapefruit-sized goiter. And I know that my grandfather loved that work, and I don't think I fully appreciated his skill and dexterity at that time, but it really formed the basis for a lot of the decisions that I would make later in life. My grandfather graduated from Loma University in 1934, and I graduated from the same school 62 years later in 1996. And this is a special place. It's the educational hub of the Seventh-day Adventist healthcare system, and has always had a focus on training doctors and other healthcare professionals to serve around the world in underserved areas and places that really need help. And it's still our focus today, more than 100 years later. I thought I would give you a brief introduction to the Seventh-day Adventists, which are a group of more than 20 million people around the world, a group of Christian people, but we share some of the same bonds with our Jewish brethren. We're Christians who respect the Shabbat. We take a day of rest and worship that starts on Friday night at sundown, and unlike most of our other Christian brethren, we worship one day before. We have an emphasis on healthy living. Many Seventh-day Adventists are vegetarian or vegan. And also a focus on education with thousands of schools around the world, many colleges and universities, and a worldwide healthcare system, much of which is based in the developing world countries. And there's also 6 medical schools around the world. We even have a church in Jerusalem near the King David Hotel that I've visited before with services every Shabbat. In 2010, there was a book written called The Blue Zones, which is based on longevity research, looking at what has helped some people live longer. And the author identified 3 different places in the world where there was the highest incidence of people living over 110 years, or over 100 years, I'm sorry. And he found that this was in Loma, in Sardinia, Italy, and Okinawa, Japan. And in the second edition of the book, there was 2 more places added, one of which was in Costa Rica and the other in Greece. But it's most interesting to look at the factors that are common to all these groups of people. And it largely centers around family and social support, which I know runs very strong in this culture as well. Having a healthy diet, not smoking, not eating too much, and also having regular and moderate physical activity. Hopefully we aren't really, there's a saying that you are what you eat, and I noticed that they put that the Adventists eat nuts here, so that might be saying something. I hope it's not completely true, although I didn't really realize that we were known for eating a lot of nuts. So another interesting fact. On the afternoon of January 12, 2010, this was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was going home from work at our hospital in Santo Domingo, and I felt a relatively mild earthquake. We have these quite frequently in California. It kind of reminded me of life back at home, until about a half hour later I realized that nobody had any communication with the Haitian people on the other side of our island. And it wasn't completely obvious at that time that 200,000 people had just lost their lives just a couple hundred miles away from us. I had been working in Haiti multiple times during the 5 years that we lived in the Dominican Republic, and I knew what the dangers and chaos are like in Haiti under normal conditions. And there was a lot of unknowns at this time immediately after the earthquake. But it was my wife who told me that I better just go immediately and see what I could do to help out. So since I always do what my wife tells me to do, I packed up a group of people from our hospital and the equipment that we had at the hospital, and we went immediately to respond to this crisis. The damages were apocalyptic in nature. Few photos really don't do justice to the situation, as this surrounded you 360 degrees throughout the city, difficult to navigate your way down the streets. Gas stations were broken down. You got a ride with whoever had gas in their car, and when it ran out, it got parked. Banks were closed. There was no commerce. But it was amazing how everybody was in a mood of just helping each other out. And we went to several different hospitals in the very initial hours that we arrived there. And there was bodies everywhere. People laying in the hospital corridors, in the patios, outside the hospital, reaching out, grabbing onto our clothes, asking for help. People that were dead, people that were almost dead, and in various states of shock. And it was hard to know where to begin. Most symbolic of how this disaster affected all levels of society is seen in these two pictures that I took. One the year before the earthquake and one shortly afterward, showing the most important building of the capital in Port-au-Prince. And even the government was completely broken down, dysfunctional, and still they struggle with many of these same issues today. So I'm honored to be invited to Israel to give this talk, but to be honest, me in Haiti, I arrived with 5 people on a small plane, making a 200-mile voyage across the island, and there was Israel, arriving in a 777 with 250 healthcare professionals, rescue dogs, and an entire field hospital ready to be deployed. It's a really amazing and commendable effort. Shortly after the earthquake, we set up an orthopedic program at the Adventist Hospital in Port-au-Prince, which has been a partner hospital of our university for many years. And this program continues to offer important orthopedic services to the people of Haiti today and is well known around that country. And for 6 months, day and night, I stayed there and I worked tirelessly after the earthquake. But I certainly don't attribute myself to the importance and the successes of that program, because there's been many people that have helped me, many experts from around the world, a couple of which you see right here in this picture, and their support has made many objective differences there, but also their friendship and the subjective side of this support is perhaps even the most meaningful part of our efforts. I have to be very impressed with the culture here, where as you transition into adulthood, service is a mandatory part of that transition, and many young people travel the world and gain a worldview, much more so than in our own culture. And I have to ask myself, why do we go on these journeys, and what's the importance of it? And I think this roots all the way back to Abraham, maybe even before. the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your father's country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation and bless you." Lech lecha. I'm sorry for my pronunciation of that. Mark had me practicing last night, and I still haven't quite gotten it correct. But the meaning, as you know, is to go, to get up and go, to get out of your comfort zone. And God called Abram to leave behind a life of ease because he had things to teach him. And these were things that he couldn't learn in the comforts of his own home and the influences of his own people. And to give up a generous income and to move out of your country may seem like a path of self-denial and hardship, but in reality, it's just a small sacrifice in the bigger picture. And when I take a look at this bigger picture, a global look at what the reality is for most people in our world, I find it hard to live a comfortable life and stay in my own country. The annual trauma mortality is approximately 5 million people around our world, and this is actually in spite of all of the funding and attention that goes into some of these other public health issues around our world. The trauma mortality is more than HIV, malaria, and TB combined. And nearly 10 times that many people survive traumatic injuries each year. Nearly 50 million people survive injuries and are permanently disabled. Whether it's good news or bad news, I can leave you to decide, but 50% of this disability is preventable, 30% of it is treatable. Thus, 80% of these people around the world are unnecessarily disabled. Largely because 5 billion of our 7.5 billion people that live on this planet have no access to safe surgery. And most of this trauma and these accidents and disabilities are occurring in low and middle income countries. In our own specialty, the demand for our services continues to grow exponentially. This is due to population growth, urbanization, industrialization, motor vehicle trauma. If you look at the number of motor vehicles in some countries in Asia, this has just risen exponentially in the last 30 or 40 years. And also natural disasters and political strife contribute to this. But the exciting news is that today we have more ways of treating and curing these issues than we've ever had before in the history of our world. So many people ask me if it's dangerous living in Haiti. And certainly there's a lot of civil unrest there. This picture is from the news last week. Right now, the people are wondering why the president is unaccountable for $3 billion that went missing in this country, and they're trying to de-seat him from his position with lots of what they call manifestations, burning tires, people getting injured and killed. But when I look at the danger of living in places like this, I just compare it to the importance for the reason of going there. I don't think it probably is dangerous if you're going there to visit a beach or going there to just see what it's all about. But when you're going there to save lives, the danger becomes a little bit irrelevant. You might run into a burning building to save a child, but you're not going to go into a store that's on fire to buy a t-shirt. This is our hospital in Haiti. It's a place for healing and offers respite from life out on the streets. We live right there on the hospital grounds, and my payment is a free lunch every day and a small place to live. I imagine it's somewhat like the lifestyle on a kibbutz. We generate our own electricity, live together with a few people that are working there at the hospital. And in many ways, there's many positive aspects about this style of life as well. Importantly, we're really there to provide top quality services for these people who need it most. And there's very few operations that I can perform at Loma University in Southern California that I can't do with the same quality in Haiti. But many times we have to improvise to reach those goals, but we don't make compromises. This is our operating room there. It didn't all just happen by chance, but we've deliberated to bring in digital x-ray and equipment to truly give these people the same type of care that our family members would be able to have in countries like this and in the United States. Now, the big important part of our work is an educational program, both for local healthcare workers, doctors, residents, medical students, as well as for residents and medical students that do rotations there from Loma University and other institutions in the United States. This is the artist's rendering, architectural rendering of a building that we've just raised $2 million for in private donations. It's going to be on the front of our hospital campus and serve as a 1,800 square meter outpatient facility and really expand the quality and amount of the services that we're able to offer. And my commitment to move back down there to Haiti is largely due to people who have given money, who have contributed, who have made commitments themselves to working there with us. So it's truly a team effort, and you can't just take donors' money and write checks in Haiti and expect a building like this to automatically appear. And this is a large, important part of my work as well as administrative tasks at the hospital. But I could show you pictures of hospital buildings, expansion, and give you statistics all day long here. And none of that is as convincing as this reason right here for going and making sacrifices to change lives in people like this girl and the other patients that we treat there. This is Jackie Lynn. She's a 7-year-old with Blount's disease, a bowed leg. And after having an operation and an external fixator, she stands proudly with a straight leg as onlookers check it out from behind. This is Will Mary. She's a 3-month-old girl with amniotic band syndrome that was compromising the viability of her left foot. And it was really only a simple operation that was performed emergently to save this foot and give her a life without having a permanent disability. Rose is a 6-year-old girl with club foot. She often has this look on her face as she is mocked at school. These children are viewed as being cursed. Many of them can't even go, aren't even allowed to go to school in places like this. And after her operation, you can see how the look on her face has changed, even more than her feet. Ziomara is a 9-year-old girl, and her mom sells roasted peanuts on the street. And when she was roasting these peanuts, this little girl got caught up in the fire and had severe burn contractures and was never able to wear shoes. And after surgery, she can now go to school and wear normal shoes. Arnie is a 15-year-old girl that had a 65-degree scoliosis. And now she can live a normal life without being deformed and disregarded. This is Chantal. Her story is a little bit longer, but we can just say she presented to us actually several months before the earthquake in Haiti when I was working in another city in the northern part of the country. She was severely burned. Her arm was stuck down at her side. Her elbow didn't move. Her hips were contracted at 90 degrees. She couldn't stand up straight, and she couldn't spread her knees apart. It was extremely sad to look at this 3-year-old girl without many options. And I asked my friend here, who's a plastic surgeon in the United States, for some advice on how to treat this case. He started giving me a lot of complex advice. I said, you need to just come down with me to help me do this case. And so he made a special trip down there, and we performed the first stage of her surgery. And then the earthquake happened, and I completely lost track of her. And I felt bad because this was a procedure that took 3 different stages. And I was wondering what happened to her. And 3 months after the earthquake, this physician here was scheduled to come down and help at our hospital take care of some earthquake injuries. And the day before he arrived, this girl and her mother appeared in our clinic. They had come from Cap Haitian, which is in the north and 7 hours away. And they said, we're here ready to have our second stage for surgery. And I said, great, we'll schedule that for tomorrow. And here she is now, a 14-year-old girl. She actually lives nearby our hospital, and I see her walking to school on a regular basis. This is Miange. She's a 28-year-old girl that never had the resources or available expertise to correct this severe deformity. We use a lot of external fixation in Haiti. It's a renewable resource for us. This fixator here is around $15,000 in the United States, but we can use it over and over in Haiti. And this is the same girl now studying to be a chef after having reconstructive surgery. This is Valerie. She's a 16-year-old girl with a club foot, never before treated. And after a gradual correction, this operation actually didn't even involve any incisions other than the pins that we put into her leg. The device corrected it over 4 months, and here are her feet afterward. This girl is Chadman. She has rickets, and her legs developed this severe knock-knee deformity. She wasn't able to walk ever since she was a young girl. Now at the age of 14, she's once again learning to walk. Marco is 19. He fell off a horse when he was 10 years old and never went to school another day in his life. His knee fused in this position. His mother left him to live with some relatives where he spent most of his day inside the house, going out only at night to beg for food. And now, after having his leg straightened, he's back in his school uniform, restarting the 3rd grade. This is Stail. She came to us when she was 7 years old, shortly after the earthquake. Many of these patients with long-standing problems started appearing at our hospital, knowing that there was expertise and availability to have their problems taken care of. Some, interestingly, even related some of these injuries to the earthquake, thinking that we might not take care of them unless they told us it was due to the earthquake. Stail had a difficult time walking. I don't know if the video plays here, but maybe it's not important. She came with her father from a town about 8 hours away. And after surgery, he's standing behind her, looking at her new legs, and even better after her fixators were removed. It's been said that if you choose a job that you truly love, you will never have to work a day in your life. And I think all of us are fortunate to be in the medical profession. We're able to influence the people around us in a positive way. We're able to make changes in the lives of our patients, even able to save lives. And it's my wish that after the talk this morning, you will not actually be working today, but rather enjoy the happiness, peace, and satisfaction of doing something with meaning and purpose. That's serendipity.